Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of CNBC-TV18 and Qualcomm present the 5G opportunity. Now, telecom is the backbone of Digital India vision, and it is imperative to build a strong domestic manufacturing ecosystem, especially in view of the Make in India call. Historically, telecom equipment and architecture were the domain of a handful of multinational companies. But India's 5G network is getting a local touch, thanks to the emergence of platforms like the Open Radio Access Network Alliance and the partnerships that Indian telecom companies have inked with local and global partners. Presently, India imports almost 85% of its telecom equipment requirements. However, Indian manufacturers are developing capabilities of manufacturing advanced equipment. ORAN is making it easier to build a standardized hardware. The recently announced production-linked incentive, or the PLI scheme by the government, will be a boost that the Indian telecom equipment manufacturers much needed. We caught up with Rajiv Chandrasekhar, the MOS of IT and Electronics, to understand how partnerships can catalyze the 5G infrastructure rollout by speeding up the process of equipment manufacturing and setup in India.
Thank you, Rima, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this keynote of the 5G program entitled Made in India for the World. Just a few weeks ago, we witnessed the director of IIT Chennai, Professor Kamakoti, a very hardworking academic professor whom I have a great deal of respect for, him and his team, putting out a video of how they made a video call on a domestically developed 5G core. And core and a stack, and just a few days after that we had the sight of the Honorable Minister of Communication, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, traveling to Chennai and making a video call on the same 5G stack and core network, which is a fully indigenous, fully Atmanirbhar Bharat solution that had been designed, architected and built in India and in the incubation ecosystem around IIT Chennai. And it is indeed a very big milestone. That video, that occasion marks a very big milestone because for most people who have seen the progress of Indian telecom and in particular the wireless sector, you know that for over 3 decades almost, India has been a consumer of technologies. And whether it was the 2G networks in the early days or the 3G networks or the subsequent 4G networks, almost every piece of the network, every piece of the software stack, every piece of the application layer, and every piece of the device ecosystem was imported or designed and manufactured elsewhere. 5G is not just another G. 5G is not just faster internet. 5G represents a tremendously deep, transformative wireless leap. It is not just the 5th generation mobile network for consumers. It is also the 1st generation of machine to machine and sensor to sensor networks and communication that are going to totally transform the way we see the internet, the way we experience the internet, and the way the internet is in general. And so it is very, very important for a country like ours that is now making the leap from being a technology consumer for several decades to wanting to, as the Honorable Prime Minister said way back in 2014-15, that we must have as one of our objectives of Digital India, not just use technology for transforming the lives of all Indians and make sure that the power of the internet and the power of technology is accessible for every Indian, but also that we become world leaders in emerging technologies and emerging trends going forward. So if you look at both those objectives, you will see that 5G will play an extremely important role in making the internet ubiquitous and available to a large part of our population that remains unconnected. and at the same time that we drive the future of wireless and mobile technology with our own indigenous made in India, designed in India solutions. So in what we have seen today at IIT Chennai and what we know is in the pipeline in terms of various startups and various innovators that are building, whether they are the open RAN on the network, or building pieces of the stack or building the devices or parts of the device for the 5G network. We are at a place very different from the early days of telecom that India saw 2.5, 3 decades ago. We are not just building out the next generation network, we are also architecting, designing and owning the intellectual property for a large part of that experience that consumers will have and the IoT aspects of the 5G network. So I think we are, and this leads, obviously this gateways to clearly what is the next generation after 5G, 6G. The Honorable Prime Minister has made it very clear that our capabilities and our desire and ambitions in the post-COVID world to be a trusted producer of digital products and solutions will extend from not just delivering and architecting 5G networks and 5G systems for India and for markets and consumers abroad, but also for the next coming generations of technology. Again, I thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I am very confident that the Prime Minister's vision that India will be a trusted provider of digital products and services to the world will soon be not just a reality, but will be a reality that will extend into a leadership position for these technologies in the coming years and in India's decade. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Well, on that note, it's time for a very short break, but don't go anywhere because on the other side, we have a very interesting panel discussion lined up. Welcome back to this very special episode of CNBC-TV18 and Qualcomm present the 5G opportunity. Now, companies across the world are looking to restructure their supply chains and are considering relocating their manufacturing base to countries that have the necessary expertise and offer a strategic advantage. India's cordial relationships with most countries strengthen its credentials for being chosen as a trusted partner. Economies of scale on the strength of domestic demand can give us a competitive advantage, with Indian manufacturers lowering the production cost, making us compete even better on the export front. In the meantime, there is a need to further develop multiple varied and relevant use cases for successfully implementing and leveraging 5G. So, what is the way forward for 5G tech that is made in India? To discuss this and much more, we're now joined by an esteemed panel of guests. We have Rajan Vagadia, the VP President at Qualcomm India and the SAARC region, Mr. Mahendra Nahata, MD HFCL, Mr. Puneet Agarwal, Founder and CEO of VVDN Technologies. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the show. I am Reema Tendulkar. Rajan, my first question is to you. First, if you could just start off this conversation by giving us your view of the 5G global landscape.
Let's look at the global scenario and what's happened in terms of the rollouts of 5G globally. Across around 70 countries, 175 plus operators have already launched commercially 5G. In another 285 countries and operators are investing in deploying 5G. 180 out of this total number of operators have already started embarking on the millimeter wave. We are on the track to see around 500 million 5G users by the end of this calendar year globally. And by 2025, approximately 3/4 of a billion users in China would be on 5G. So if you look at the scale, 5G has already gone to that level. It's already 4 years. We started in 2019, so maybe 3 years, and we are rolling into the 4th year. We have 5G being rolled out globally. And as the world evolves and all of these is being tried out in the world and rolled out commercially, India has a massive advantage. Now let's take one example specifically, that of millimeter wave. Millimeter wave has been rolled out globally in multiple countries. and many countries they started with sub mid bands, which is the sub 6 as they call it, and now they're moving to millimeter wave. India will be able to leverage that ecosystem.
Mr. Nahata, coming to you next, if you could also share your thoughts on the broad trends, just to add to what Mr. Vagadia was saying in terms of 5G network modernization and how India can leverage from global experience.
5G started in the world with US, China, Japan, and Korea. Now it has quickly caught all over the world. As Rajan said, it has started in more than 170 countries. People are making investment. More than 500 operators have started making investment in 5G. And more than 170 operators are already commercial. And India can certainly be advantaged with this experience which other operators have got in different countries. Of course, as you know, we all know 5G auctions are going to happen very soon in India. Initially, Indian operators would start rolling out their network with mid-band, which is starting from 3.4 gigahertz. And then for capacity requirement, they would move to millimeter band very quickly. And what I see in India, fixed wireless access devices are also going to be used in large number. And also at the same point of time, as has been happening in the worldwide, high capacity radios with massive MIMO, which is 32 TR or 64 TR, would be used quite extensively. But world is moving towards open RAN, where network is disaggregated and you can have different vendors for different kind of network elements, which is happening all over the world. India can take certainly advantage from that, and that would reduce the operator's network cost tremendously. So India would certainly be advantaged with the global experience.
Open RAN will clearly be a big enabler. So, Mr. Agarwal, 5G transformational impact cuts across various industries, and it can be a great digital enabler for India's economic vision. What, according to you, will be the impact of 5G on India's economy?
I think 5G would definitely have a big impact on global as well as Indian economy. If you see, there are multiple industries which will get benefited by rollout of 5G services across the world. Starting with, we can talk about medical and healthcare, right? Where the applications like remote robotic operations, right? Personalized health monitoring, everything would be activated on the 5G network. Now, this is going to be a big impact on the medical industry, and as per the stats, this is going to be impact of more than $500 billion by 2030, only alone in the medical industry. Similarly, if you see the financial services, today the mobile banking and the internet banking has become part of every household, right? And 5G is further going to enhance it. And there's going to be a big impact the way we look at our financial services being offered to the consumers, right? Similarly on the robotics, similarly on the automotive. So these are the few vertical areas where they are responsible for creating a big impact on economy.
Mr. Nahata, 5G auctions are expected to be conducted very soon. The rollout sometime in FY23. What does the roadmap look like according to you, and how will it change user experience?
Look, auction is definitely going to happen, as we can see. I'm just giving the other point of view. When you talk of user experience, in the beginning, we should not set up too much of high expectations from user point of view. Because initially, some of the operators may launch 5G on a non-standalone mode, wherein they are using 4G core for giving 5G services. The radio would be 5G, but the core would be 4G. In such a situation, it would be a scenario like enhanced broadband, not really giving you high-end services with very, very low latency, because the use cases would still not be there. Once the operators move to standalone mode, then you would have the services which are the very stringent latency requirement, like, what you can say, drone applications, robotics, Industry 4.0, where the automatic machines are running on the 5G network, and autonomous vehicles.
Mr. Bagadia, while there is no doubt that the applications of 5G are massive, the opportunity is massive, but in the current situation, do you not think that pure 5G use cases are limited? What are the opportunities that one can expect when it comes to 5G? And also wanted to get your thoughts in on 5G trials which are being conducted right now.
We started trials earlier before the auction happened. So the operators got some time to test the network, to do some tests, to check out some use cases. A few of them probably are there in the public. You have seen that Jio did trials on the drones using their captive 5G network. And then likewise, you have seen Airtel demonstrating a few 5G use cases which they have publicly announced. Now, the trials give the operators a very good opportunity to leverage and straight away roll out the 5G networks the moment the auction happens and the spectrum is awarded.
Mr. Nahata, more than 170 operators globally have already launched 5G services. Is India going to be a late adopter of 5G? And what are the challenges that we face when we look to adopt 5G?
Look, I wouldn't say that India is late. Of course, we could have started a few months earlier. But, we can definitely leapfrog in the technology. Like you take an example of 4G. We started a bit later than the, different parts of the world it had already started. But when it started in India, we have overtaken the world.
Mr. Agarwal, the Made in India standard 5Gi is all set to be formally incorporated in the global 5G standard. How will this enable telecom equipment makers, especially the domestic players, to start using the standard to develop network gear for 5G services?
So I think there's a lot of discussion happening on the 5Gi standard, right? And some part of it has been incorporated inside the 3GPP specifications, but then there's the discussions are still open, and there would be opportunity, to use that standard. But irrespective of that, what is important, and you mentioned it correctly, that how it's going to benefit the domestic equipment manufacturer and technology development companies, right? Overall the 5G infrastructure, right? So I think with inception of open standards like ORAN or maybe 5Gi, right, which is under discussion, right, there would be a lot of ecosystem development which will happen in India for development of telecom gears like 5G radios, which is both hardware and software. Then it will be 5G CU and DU, again both hardware and software, and in fact 5G core, right? So in fact, for some of the government, rollout of 5G services which they are planning, they have already announced that they're going to use only Make in India technology. So that is going to give a big boost to domestic technology companies and manufacturing companies.
Mr. Nahata, you are participating in the Telecom PLI. Would you share your thoughts on the impact it's expected to have?
Look, this PLI scheme is going to result in a lot of increased competitiveness to the Indian companies, because it's on an average about 5 to 6% of the manufacturing cost would be given as a production-linked incentive to telecom equipment manufacturers. Now, 6% is a lot of money. And there is no limitation that how much you can produce, and there is no limitation on money to be given. So there is a domestic demand where you can be more competitive than the imported gear, and taking advantage of that domestic demand, increased domestic demand and more competitiveness, you can be more competitive in the export market also. Look, Indian manufacturers have to look globally now. Once you are innovating, once you are setting up your R&D in India, you're designing in India, your market is global. And add-on is the PLI scheme, which gives you higher competitiveness in India and globally.
Mr. Bagadia, just to take a step back and zoom out and talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision to transform India into a digitally empowered society. And in that context, Qualcomm offers support to India's technology ecosystem through the Qualcomm Design in India Challenge 2022. In its 7th edition, this design challenge has spurred domestic hardware ecosystem, which will positively impact the product ecosystem of design and enhance the manufacturing facilities in India. Could you explain the vision, the logic, and how it benefits the innovation ecosystem?
This was in 2015 when the Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi met our CEO, the then CEO. The request was to see if we can, as Qualcomm, help hardware startups. One of the challenges as India we have seen is we are very good in software, but there was a lack of startups in the hardware space. Today, with 68,000 startups, we are number 3 in the world in terms of the count of startups. We are one of the top few countries with the highest number of startups in the tech field. And this actually has been fueled over the last few years. And we had this early advantage that we started this hardware-centric startup program, Qualcomm Design in India program. And then we have seen that the quality of the startups have changed. The technology interventions the startups are using that has changed. And as a part of this program, what we do is we engage with them. We select some of these top startups. Up till now, we have incubated around 77 startups. And then we help them file the patents. So it's a multi-dimensional program. It helps them on engineering. It helps them in go-to-market. We help them to file IP, which is very important for the startups and India too. Extending that and that philosophy, we recently announced the Qualcomm semiconductor mentorship program. The new need of today, and as we have all seen, the recently announced 76,000 crores of the PLI or the package for semiconductor manufacturing in India, a very big element of semiconductor manufacturing in India is the semiconductor design. And we have just and recently announced along with CDAC, which is MATI, a program which is Qualcomm semiconductor mentorship program. We will shortlist 10 startups to start with, and then mentor them to design and help them across engineering, across interaction with the fabs where they have to go to build their chips. So I think startup, and this is a very firm belief of Qualcomm and myself, that startup is going to play such a huge role in the innovation that this country, our country, can present. And we have to be, now with 68,000 startups, we have to play a larger role in the global ecosystem.
Well, that's all the time we have for you on this show. A big thank you to all our distinguished guests for joining us in this special discussion. With that, it's a wrap on the show. Thank you for watching.
Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.